Welcome to the NBAVE podcast.
Welcome back to NBAVE, the NBA Avenue podcast. We had 2 games of basketball last night, 2 play-in games. We saw 2 teams get eliminated. We'll start with the first game. We'll go in chronological order. Lakers versus Pelicans. In this game, what we saw happening was almost exactly what happened, minus the comeback at the end. In my prediction of the Lakers versus the Pelicans, I thought that in the previous matchup where the Lakers already played the Pelicans, they showed that there is a massive mismatch here with Anthony Davis, where the Pelicans don't have anybody big enough to guard him. Valanciunas can't get it done, and neither can Nance. So that leaves them with a big hole, because when you try to bring extra help over, LeBron was able to use his basketball acumen and his passing skills to get it done in the first game, and they were able to get layup after layup after layup after easy basket, all the way at the hoop, layups and dunks. And that was how they demolished the Pelicans in the first game. They started off this game a little bit slow. Pelicans played well in the first quarter. As it went into the second quarter, LeBron started to tighten up with his decision-making and his passing, and he started to do exactly what he did in that first game, the final game of the regular season. And the Lakers started pulling away, because what they were doing was exactly as we predicted. The Lakers started getting easy hoops, whereas CJ McCollum on the other end was taking tough, contested shots, despite the fact that he scored over 25 points in the last 7 games of the regular season. He was like 2 of 9 in the first half. And that was kind of what we said would happen, because what we said was that in the playoffs, the opportunities are going to dry up, the openings are going to tighten up, and he's going to still be trying to take his usual shots, but they're just going to be much tougher considering that the defense is going to be better. And that was exactly what happened. And we said that the defense causing the tougher shots is going to turn into long rebounds, front rim rebounds, and it's going to lead to transition buckets where the Lakers are able to throw outlet passes and get easy dunks in transition. And that was exactly what happened when the Lakers went on their run. McCollum hasn't learned from all of his previous failures, and they were even talking about this. I think it was Van Gundy. He was saying how they need McCollum to score because he scored 25 points over the last 7 games of the regular season. And I thought the answer was right there in the question where, yeah, he scored 25 points over the last 7 games of the regular season. But if you want to know how McCollum is going to play in the playoffs, you shouldn't take a sample size of 7 games from the regular season. You should be looking at what he's done in the playoffs through his career. And to this point in his career, his playoff career has been a massive failure. He hasn't ever played really to the top of his ability in the playoffs, and it's been virtually the same thing every single time. He was a shooter who was better from 2-point range than he was from 3-point range. He expanded his range out to 3-point land, but in the playoffs, every time things start to tighten up, he's always struggled. And there's been many examples of this when he was teamed up with Damian Lillard in the playoffs, and they couldn't beat teams that you sometimes thought they would for sure beat. In some cases, they got swept by teams that you thought they were going to beat. So McCollum did his usual, and I think that Willie Green was really, really a genius coach in this game for what he did, but we'll get there for what he did in the fourth quarter. But then starting the third quarter, the Lakers got a little bit complacent, and they got away from what they were doing. And what you saw was LeBron really started to have a very negative impact on this game for the Lakers, where LeBron was settling for long-range, Steph Curry range, 3-point shots, and also he was getting the ball at the foul line range with his back towards the basket, and he was waiting the shot clock down, and then with 2 or 3 seconds left on the clock, he would take these ridiculous fadeaway shots. And that really helped bring the Pelicans back into the game, because off of those misses, the Pelicans were then going and scoring. Zion was phenomenal in this game. He got injured a little bit at the end, and he went out, and hopefully he'll be back for the next one. But Zion was dominant down low. He was able to get to the hoop whenever he needed, put up the 40 points in a fantastic display of inside touch. And that's the strongest part of Zion's game. It's his touch near the basket. He has a really uncanny ability to finish. Granted, he doesn't have an outside part of his game. He's not a good shooter, but it doesn't matter. If he sticks to his strength and you pair him with the right team, he could be very effective. Is he an otherworldly talent, a once-in-a-generation player? No, but he has certain strengths, specifically around the basket, that are very pronounced and were very pronounced in last night's game, where he tried his best to will the Pelicans to victory and nearly succeeded. But what ended up happening was, as the gap started to close, Willie Green realized Brandon Ingram is ineffective. CJ McCollum is less than ineffective. He's being destructive out there for our team. And he pulled both of those guys going into the fourth quarter. LeBron kept on trying to play hero ball and win it on his own. And LeBron, at the end of the day, really only has his teammates to thank for winning this because he did his best, his absolute best, to help the Lakers lose this game in the third and fourth quarter. Now, LeBron was okay in the first quarter. He was very good in the second quarter, and then he was very bad in the third and fourth quarters because he was being a straight-up negative, where he was causing his team to not have quality possessions, not have quality shots. And what makes it worse is that LeBron could do the exact opposite of that. Had he just tried to not create shots for himself, but assist like he did in the previous game where they blew out the Pelicans, and like he did in the second quarter where they started to take their lead heading into the third quarter, you would have seen the Lakers run away with this game and stay way out in front. But what ended up happening was LeBron did not do that, and he nearly cost his teammates the game. And at the end of the day, LeBron has to thank his lucky stars that he has Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, D'Angelo Russell, and Anthony Davis. And all of this was magnified and zoomed in and highlighted on the last minute of the game where LeBron had an opportunity with the ball in his hands, and he let the shot clock wind down, and he took a horrible fadeaway shot where I believe he airballed everything, and Anthony Davis came up with the rebound, put it up, got his own rebound again, put it up, and got fouled, and then was able to go to the line and hit the free throws and turn this into a 4-point game. But if not for Reeves and his steady shot-making ability, Russell making big-time three-pointers, Hachimura coming through in big moments, and Anthony Davis on the glass, getting fouled, getting rebounds off LeBron's misses, LeBron would have been the cause of the Lakers getting relegated to a second play-in game and not advancing straight into the playoffs. So LeBron is very, very lucky. He'll take it, and he'll move forward and try to put out the best version of himself in a very, very tough series against the Denver Nuggets. So we got that one right, ultimately. The game went as we saw, but the Pelicans came back through great shooting from Herb Jones, and great playmaking, and also good shooting from Alvarado. And Alvarado, it was genius the way Willie Green went with Alvarado, because in this game, McCollum was trying to create shots for himself. He was failing, and he was taking very tough shots, which turned into easy baskets the other way. So instead of having a guy who was only trying to create for himself and couldn't playmake very well, he went with a guy who was playmaking really well, Alvarado. But Alvarado also adds more of the three-point threat than McCollum does. And I know it sounds a little weird because who's the better scorer, Alvarado or McCollum? Of course, McCollum. But McCollum, in this playoff setting, was really struggling to create shots, whereas since Alvarado was more of a playmaker and had more of the three-point presence in this game, it was an easy decision, or maybe it wasn't an easy decision, but it was a smart decision that Willie Green decided to go with Alvarado, and that was why they came back in this game. Alvarado on 2 twisted ankles, one on each foot. He was able to really propel them back, and who knows, if Zion had been there on the final couple of possessions, maybe they would have prevailed and defeated the Los Angeles Lakers, but that is neither here or there. We will never know the answer to that question, and we move on. As the Lakers move on, we will move on to discuss the next game. Warriors versus the Kings. The way we saw this one going was, I thought the Warriors had the pieces inside between Looney, Trace Jackson-Davis, Draymond Green, who we know really beat up on Sabonis last year in the playoffs, and they also have the fourth guy inside, Kuminga. Although Kuminga's a wing, I understand, but they have so many big bodies that they can throw at the Kings. And on top of that, the Kings had some major injuries. They were missing Malik Monk, who was a massive force in the playoff series last year that went to 7 games. But it's not that I thought that the Kings didn't have any pieces. I knew the Kings had pieces. I've watched a lot of Kings basketball. I'm not one of these guys who, like a lot of people, I think Chuck even said, Charles Barkley said, that he didn't know Keon Ellis existed until last night. Now, that's not the case for me. I've watched a lot of Keon Ellis. I know that Keon Ellis is good. I know that Davion Mitchell is good too, and I actually think Davion Mitchell is better than the Kings give him credit for, because every time he plays in a playoff game, he plays incredibly. And I was kind of surprised that Davion Mitchell didn't get more run up to this point. And it took a couple of injuries until they really started having to trust it. They basically didn't trust in him. They only trusted in him when they were forced to trust in him, and they were forced to put him out there because they didn't have any other options. And everything I've seen from Davion Mitchell, every playoff game he plays in, he plays very, very well. But between Ellis and Mitchell, Fox, Sabonis, Harrison Barnes had a couple of good shots. The number one thing that they did in this game, the main criteria that they used, was an otherworldly defensive effort. Their defense was so incredible, it was like the entire Warriors team came down with a serious case of butterfingers, where several times throughout the game, Curry had the ball poked from him, and it went for a dunk the other way. And it wasn't just Curry, it was Curry, Thompson, it was anyone who had the ball. It was Kuminga, it was everyone. Everyone on the Warriors was just the Fox and Ellis and Mitchell. They were all poking the ball away. Where just like you think the play is about to go this way, and no, the play is just suddenly going the other way. You almost didn't understand what happened. It was like the Warriors didn't expect a level of physicality that came in this game, and the Kings did a great job in this one-game winner-take-all sudden death matchup, and that's the beauty of it. It's also the dark part of it, is that what happened last season in the playoffs was it took the Warriors time until they got settled in and figured out how to beat the Kings. Now, they had certain elements of that recipe still going for them last night, where they knew how to defend Sabonis. And yes, Sabonis got his points, but Sabonis didn't have a great game. In fact, Sabonis missed a whole bunch of easy shots that it looked like he should be able to score, and Draymond Green played very good defense on him throughout a lot of the game. There were a lot of empty possessions for the Kings because Sabonis had the ball in his hands and couldn't score. But despite that, the Kings were still able to beat the Warriors really, really well. They beat them by a lot. They beat them by 14. I'm sorry, they beat them by 24. 24-point victory, and it wasn't close for the entire fourth quarter. Maybe they got it to 10, maybe they got it to single digits at one point, but then it went right back up. And there came a point where it was just scrub time, and you knew that the game was over. You knew that the Warriors' big three could possibly be over. But the same way last year, where the Warriors lost the first two games of the series, and it took them time. If this would have been a 7-game series, I do think that the Warriors would have prevailed and they would have won the entire series. But this is a play-in game where you have one game. And on this one game, the Warriors came up empty from almost every single player and every single position. Steph Curry didn't ever get it going. Sure, he scored over 20 points, but it wasn't a good Steph Curry game. It was a dreadful, beyond dreadful Klay Thompson game. Thompson over 10 in one of the worst games you'd ever see from him. And something that I thought that the Warriors were going to rely on. I thought that they were going to be able to rely on Klay Thompson because he has so much experience in these type of games. And when I looked at it and I saw Klay Thompson on one side along with Steph Curry, along with Andrew Wiggins and Chris Paul, you had all these reliable players in the playoffs. And then on the other side, you're looking at who do the Kings have to rely on? Well, obviously Fox, but beyond Fox, they're going to need Keegan Murray and Davion Mitchell and Keon Ellis. And it was just like, well, these guys are good, but you can't rely on them to the level that I would think a playoff Klay Thompson would. But when Curry didn't have a good game, and they were giving up the basketball, and Thompson had beyond a dreadful game. He had a nightmarish game. And Andrew Wiggins didn't have a good game. And Gary Payton wasn't on the court, and he would have been very helpful with his energy and his rebounding, considering how many offensive rebounds the Warriors gave up to the Kings. The Kings had incredible energy throughout the entire game. Really, the only player who played well for the Warriors the entire night consistently was Moses Moody. He scored 16 points coming off the bench in only 15 minutes. He played really well. Beyond him, Kuminga had a short stretch at the end of the first half. Beyond that, none of the players on the Warriors played well. And Draymond Green was okay. He was pretty good on defense, but Wiggins was not good. Trace Jackson Davis played his 11 minutes and then got yanked, and you never saw him again. Or maybe he played a few minutes in the beginning, and then maybe he got back on the court for the final few minutes. I don't remember if he was in that closing lineup or not. But regardless, none of them played well. Nobody on the entire Warriors roster had a good game, and that's the gamble that you play with because the Warriors, up until that game, they've been playing very well over the last 20 games or so. They didn't start the season off great. Well, maybe the first few games were pretty good, but then they went into a large rut. Things were not going right for them. There were a lot of ups and downs. There was Draymond issues for 25 games, and then you come up to the end of the season, and the Warriors did what they had to do. They went on a run, and they managed to at least still be in the play-in. But then that's the problem is that now, even though you're probably a better team, and look, if there was, especially with the Monk and Herter injuries, and if you would have the opportunity to go 7 games, you would maybe figure out a way to win like you did in last year's series, where this game was basically a continuation of that playoff series. It was like you expected the Warriors to be the better team, and then what happens is Sacramento starts off, and it just turns into this track meet running up and down. And Sabonis doesn't play particularly well, but somehow Sacramento's able to still win games and beat the Warriors at their own game, it seems. And the Warriors seem out of sync. But then the Warriors, after losing 2 games, they got it together and they were able to push it to 7 and then eventually win Game 7 with on the backs of great performances from the stars. And in this one game, well, guess what? It's basically the first game of the last year's playoffs, but you didn't get a game 2, and then after that, you didn't get 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And so, look, is there any shame in saying I predicted the Warriors to win and the Warriors lost? No, because it's a one-gamer. They could play this 10 times. The Warriors could win 70%. It doesn't matter. Maybe Keon Ellis or Keegan Murray don't have the game of their lives in this one, in the 70% of them, and the Warriors go on to win. Maybe Klay Thompson in 50% of them plays well. Maybe Trace Jackson Davis doesn't look like a shell of himself in the first few minutes and then get pulled, and the whole thing is different. Maybe they just say, hey, let's just use Looney the same way we used Looney and he was great last year. Maybe we just use Looney this year. Chris Paul didn't do anything. Chris Paul was as absolutely a non-factor this year for the Warriors as anyone possibly could be. And it's to the point where people are on Twitter saying, hey, Jordan Poole was great. We should bring Poole back. And it's like, well, Poole hasn't exactly been that great either. But still, they gave up pieces to get Chris Paul. And when it all mattered, like Chris Paul was a total non-factor. Total and complete non-factor. And really, biggest blame of the year probably either between Draymond for missing those 25 games, which probably cost them and putting them in a position to only be in a play-in. And then Andrew Wiggins he missed a lot more personal time this year. Nobody knows why, at least it's not publicized, but he wasn't himself. He was the second best player when they won the championship, and now he's suddenly totally not in there. And then you just basically have Curry with the defense from Draymond, and if you don't have Wiggins as the number 2, and Thompson isn't any good anymore, at least in this game, what do you have? Podziemski wasn't good in the game. Nobody was. Chris Paul wasn't good, so what are you going to do? It's just an absolute nightmare the way this game went, and Klay Thompson is symbolic of it because the way he played, kind of symbolic of the way the entire game went for the Golden State Warriors. And as a result of this, what's now going to happen is the Pelicans are going to play against the Kings in a couple of nights, and that matchup is going to be totally different. It's going to be a matchup where the Pelicans have the size to reckon with Sabonis, whereas they didn't have the size to reckon with Anthony Davis, so that's totally different. Pelicans stand a real good chance at winning this game, and it's really weird because when you see the Kings do what they did to the Warriors, it feels like they overcame, it feels like they conquered, and it feels like the Kings are on the fast track to going somewhere, but that's not really the case because the Kings they are totally capable. They've been so inconsistent. They've been so up and down this whole year, win-loss, win-loss. That's why they're in the position they're in now. And they could totally lose to the Pelicans. The Pelicans have been the better team over the course of the year. And the Pelicans can get a good game from Zion. They can get a good game from Ingram. Hopefully Zion plays. They can get a good game from McCollum because it's going to be different. But look, if the Kings are able to bring that sort of defense that they brought against the Warriors, then, hey, they would stand a really good shot to beat anyone. Because with that kind of defense, if they're able to just turn the other team over and throw them so out of sync that literally nobody on the team has a good game, then, yeah, the Kings can win any game. And they'll definitely have the best game the best player in the game. De'Aaron Fox is better than Zion. He's better than Ingram. He's better than McCollum. So you're going to have a leader who's capable of definitely taking you over the top. So who do I think is going to win that game? I'm really not sure yet. I have to think about it a bit more, and I'll put it out in a future episode before that game ends up happening. But we will have some time. We have a couple of days until then. We have a Thursday day off, so maybe I'll put that out on Thursday. Who I think is going to win, the Kings or the Pelicans? But it's a close matchup there. It can really go either way. because both teams haven't really been very, very consistent. And then for the Lakers are in it. The Lakers are going to play the Nuggets. That's what we thought would happen. It did happen that way, and the Lakers are now absolutely toast, and it's going to be game over. But hey, you had no choice. You couldn't lose and risk losing again and then being totally out. You had to win. You had to survive and advance. And now you have a couple of days off. You can game plan, you can rest up, and try to bring a level of physicality and see if the Nuggets are able to hold up over the course of 7 games. And most likely, yes, the Nuggets will. The Nuggets will prevail. And who knows, maybe they'll even sweep the Lakers again. As always, you can follow the show on social at NBAVE, that's NBA Avenue, NBAVE, and you can reach out to the show by email at nbavenue@yahoo.com. As always, we're your source for a great time every time. And until next time, we are out.